Welcome, everyone, to the Trust Issues podcast. I'm consumer investigator Dale Cardwell. Here we talk about post-COVID scams that manipulated the circumstances during the shutdown and are flourishing today. You know, I cover a lot of these schemes in my new book, Don't Get Scammed, Get Smart, 7 Steps to Outsmart Today's Most Dangerous Post-COVID Scams. We're talking about real stories, real people, and sadly, real losses, so you can learn the patterns and beat the con artists at their own game. You're legally responsible for this. You cash the check.
Is that what you normally do with a customer? You curse at them and belittle them? You're here to solicit new business. You're here to get money from our people. How does it feel to be held accountable for this after you've taken all of this money?
You're not insured to remove trees.
We just want to talk.
This is Trust Issues with Dale Cardwell. Moving is supposed to represent a fresh start, a new home, a new chapter, right? But for thousands of consumers, every single year, moving turns into a financial and emotional nightmare. Consumers report being quoted one price, then charged thousands more. Some discover the company they hired online wasn't even actually a moving company, just a broker selling their move to someone else, which ends up costing them even more money. Others say their belongings were essentially held hostage until additional money was paid. And here's the scary part, folks. Many of these scams began with what appears to be a legitimate online search. Today on Trust Issues, we're exposing some of the most common moving scams impacting consumers right now, how moving brokers have flooded the industry, and what you need to know before trusting someone with everything you own. But first, take a listen to what happened to one Army veteran who didn't properly vet his moving company.
They don't deserve to be in business.
Rosemary and Richard Sweeting are still reeling over their recent experience with a company they hired to move their household across state lines.
The Army has always moved us, so it was something that we weren't used to, is having to find somebody to do the move for us. So I filled out one of those online quotes trying to find out how much it cost.
Soon enough, the Sweetings were bombarded with phone calls from a horde of different companies claiming to be reputable movers. They ended up hiring Safeway Moving, sight unseen.
He quoted us $3,000. And I said, well, does that include packing, unpacking, taking away all the trash, which I have in the email that I wanted a full pack and a full unpack. I wanted basically what the Army does for us. I wanted them to do it. And he kept saying, if that's what you choose, then that's what we're going to do.
I mean, I was skeptical, but I said, okay, if that's your guys' price. Because I thought the price was really low, but that's what they gave us.
But they didn't give them a copy of the agreed upon terms for the move.
The contract that we signed was signed through email. And when I went and tried to click on it so that I could see what we had agreed to and at least tell that to them, the contract was no longer there.
There are a lot of people out there that are just criminals, and what's a difficult situation in any respect can become a nightmare.
Better Business Bureau investigator Steve Baker says the Sweeting setup is a classic case of a bait-and-switch moving scam.
What the crooks do is they advertise on the internet. They've got very nice websites. They're very friendly on the phone, make all sorts of promises, but they don't go through. But they will almost always quote the lowest price you're going to get. And of course, they're going to double or triple that later after they've got your stuff and held hostage.
And that's exactly what happened to the Sweetings. After the movers packed up their belongings, the price ballooned.
The next day, the dispatcher called, I think he called Rosemary, and he said, you're going to have to pay an additional $1,000 because that's what was on the paperwork. They basically were like extorting us, basically.
If you don't give us $1,000, there's nothing that you can do, and we're going to hold on to it. So either pay up or we keep your stuff.
Joining us now is my senior producer, Marnie ZambrI, who has worked tirelessly with me over the years to bust con artists and recover funds for consumers. Marnie, the Sweetings experience is unfortunately not a unique situation. How common are these schemes?
Well, let me tell you, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration receives thousands of complaints every year from people that are trying to move. And in fact, according to the Better Business Bureau, about 57% of those complaints have to do with problems with how much they're charged and kind of having a bait and switch. They're with movers and they're with brokers. And the bottom line is that they really just want to make people aware that this is going on and helping them vet between the movers and the brokers so that they don't get ripped off later on.
Marnie, it's truly the wild, wild west. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, a moving expert will hop on the podcast to give us advice on how to spot suspicious moving companies and what we need to ask before we hand over our belongings to a stranger. The Trust Issues podcast is brought to you by TrustDALE Insurance, powered by Legacy Risk Solutions network of more than 600 insurance carriers. Get coverage for your home, your business, your car, your fleet, your health, even your life at a fair rate for real coverage. Go to TrustDALEinsurance.com to find out more. Welcome back, everyone, to the Trust Issues podcast. Today we're talking about moving. Whether it's cross-town or cross-country, moving is consistently ranked as one of life's most stressful events, often cited alongside divorce and the death of a loved one. Adding to that stress is the shifting shape of the moving industry. How do you know if the company you're hiring is trustworthy or is even a moving company at all? Joining us now is Lisa Robbins of TrustDALE Certified Maya Van Lines. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Dale.
You know, years ago when you hired a mover, you were usually hiring the actual company handling your belongings, but today that's no longer the case a lot of the time. What's changed?
A lot has changed recently. Now you have what's called moving brokers. They call themselves moving agents, whatever, to make their name sound better. Basically, they're hiring the moving company for you.
Yeah, it's a trick, right?
It's a trick. Yes.
Well, so let's start from the beginning. What is the biggest mistake that somebody that's hiring a mover makes?
Just going on a blank website and putting in your information and getting 100 calls. So when you get those 100 calls, one of them may be a moving broker.
Well, because you go on and look, I've looked at this. My one of my friends moved down to Florida, and we were looking for movers. And of course, I say go to TrustDALE, but they have to go online and they start looking, and like a website comes up. It's like moving.com, and it kind of looks like a official organization that will get you to a mover, but that's not the case at all. Tell me a little bit about these brokers and how they operate.
So basically, they get your information, and then moving.com, for instance, will send it out to like 10 different companies, right? One of them may be a broker. So you get 10 different quotes, and the lowest quote may be whatever. And then they sell it to another moving company. And when the moving company gets there, a lot of times they think they're moving one box and you have 100 boxes. So they up the price. So by not getting the on-site estimate, a legitimate quote from a legitimate moving company, a lot of times you get double the price once they get there.
Well, and then another red flag, he was getting quotes that were asking for like 50% of the move up front.
Yeah.
Is that something you got to really watch out for?
Right. Yeah. A lot of the brokers will ask for 50% up front, a high deposit. They'll ask because that's their money, because the other 50% is the moving company's money.
So that's their cut of the thing.
Exactly.
So I'll give you some good advice right now. Lisa, my advice is to know that you're actually talking to the moving company that's going to come to your home and give you a written in-person estimate. That's going to take care of so many problems. How important is it to get that in-person estimate?
It is very important. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be in person. It could be over a video call, but you want to get that written estimate. You want to have everything in writing, pictures, video, in person, something, because you tell me a gun safe and it could be a small gun safe and they get there and it's a 500-pound gun safe and they don't have the equipment to move it.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you have everything in writing and have the person come inside and see the gun safe.
And are we talking like an itemized list? What do they call that
Yes.
in the moving business?
It's an inventory, an itemized list, everything is the same. But if you don't have an inventory, we don't know what you're moving.
So is there any kind of licensing and the moving? And I mean, I know that there is, but how do me as somebody in the public find that information to confirm the company I'm hiring is actually legit?
So you want to go to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Their website is safer.fmcsa.gov. You put in there, you can put a name, DOT, whatever you have of them. You put in there. Once the company snapshot comes up, at the very top, it'll say if they're a broker, if they only have a broking license.
Well, and I think let's make it clear because, look, in every business that you go in, there's always kind of a middleman. There can always be a middleman when you're doing things. But I think the key thing that people need to know about the broker is that when you're hiring a broker to do your move, you're not talking to the moving company itself. And so they really don't know your needs.
Correct.
They don't see your stuff. And so when you put your stuff in their hands, you don't know who you're dealing with.
No. And they're not vetted half the time.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next big trap for folks. How do you approach insurance for your belongings, Lisa?
Right. There's several different options. You can buy it directly from the moving company, which we do offer. There's several different companies. We like movinginsurance.com. It just depends on your needs. If you are packing your own belongings, the liability insurance doesn't cover everything. So in that case, I always send them to movinginsurance.com because they have a bigger policy for you. If you are letting us do all the packing, all the crating, everything, we do offer a insurance policy for you, a liability policy for you.
Yeah. It's a red flag if your mover says, don't worry about insurance.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So
yeah, that's for sure.
Get insurance no matter what.
Right.
So the Sweetings did eventually get their stuff, but it came at a huge price. They paid double the amount they were originally quoted. That's why they are urging other consumers to do their homework before you sign on the bottom line.
Do research on the companies that you're going to do business with. And if they come back with a price that seems too good to be true, then most likely it is.
Another big red flag, Lisa, is who's going to be in my home? Right. That's something people don't even think about. How important is it to hire a company that does background checks on potential movers?
It's very, very important. A lot of times with brokers, they give it to a company and they just pick people off the street, the local, wherever. With a legitimate company, they have full-time employees that have been trained and know how to handle your fragile and your most expensive stuff.
One of the reasons, Marnie, we wound up representing Maya Van Lines is because we busted a company that had hired a mover that literally had been inside the prison system more time than he had been outside the prison system. And they just kept hiring him every time he got out.
Well, and when we asked them, do you background check? He goes, well, yes, we background check, but we don't background deny.
Yeah, and so that was a lesson, a very valuable lesson to learn.
It was. So let's go ahead and wrap it up, and we're going to do some Dale do's and don'ts when you're hiring a mover.
Do verify licensing and reputation. Look up their DOT number. Ask how long they've been operating and what kind of insurance they have, and read reviews. Better yet, ask people you trust who they trust for moving.
Don't hire based on price alone. The lowest estimate can often become the most expensive mistake.
Do get everything in writing. Make sure estimates, timelines, fees, and inventory lists are all documented before move day.
Don't pay a large upfront deposit, especially through Cash App, wire transfers, or any other unusual payment. What do you prefer that they pay with?
We do offer Zelle now just because it's easier. So Zelle or credit card. Credit card is easier to dispute.
Right, there you go. And that's the company saying it's easier to dispute. That means the consumer can dispute it. So that's a company that feels strongly about their ability to deliver. Do ask if they're a broker. You want to know exactly who is handling your belongings before pickup.
And don't ignore the red flags. Poor communication, vague contracts, high-pressure sales tactics, or constantly changing business names are all huge warning signs.
Let's face it, folks, when it comes to anything that costs money or makes you feel vulnerable, everyone has some trust issues. We've all been burned. My mission is to help you identify, avoid, and outsmart today's most dangerous scams. I do that in my book, Don't Get Scammed, Get Smart. 7 steps to outsmart today's most dangerous post-COVID scams. Consider it your essential guide to navigating today's marketplace safely and successfully. You can find it on Amazon.
Or you can go to TrustDALE.com. There you will find a bunch of businesses that Dale has handpicked and checked out for your needs throughout your home services, including plumbing, electric, and of course, if you need a mover, just go to TrustDALE.com.
And thank you, Lisa Robbins from TrustDALE Certified Maya Van Lines, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you guys so much for listening. I'm consumer investigator Dale Cardwell.
And I'm Marnie ZambrI.
Make sure you listen next time here on Trust Issues. If you enjoyed this episode of Trust Issues, make sure to like, follow, and share the podcast so more people in our community can stay one step ahead of scammers. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.